that? Man, at the
Boy,
top, the world is better just at the top. They top players is better than our top players.
name me 3 American players that do what Wemby, Giannis, and Shea do, both sides of the ball.
Paul Pierce just sent a shockwave through the basketball world with one brutally honest claim. He basically said American basketball is in serious trouble for the next decade, predicting no American MVPs for 10 straight years. And sitting right there beside him, Kevin Garnett heard every single word before delivering a cold 7-word response that completely shifted the energy in the room. But before KG fired back, you need to hear what Pierce actually said first, because what came out of his mouth sounded less like a sports take and more like a straight-up warning to every American basketball fan paying attention. The NBA MVP race has been dominated by international stars for 8 consecutive years now. Ever since James Harden won the award back in 2018, no American-born player has claimed that trophy. And this was not just some casual sports debate happening in the background. Kevin Garnett was sitting right there taking it all in. And this is a man who survived 21 seasons in the NBA, won an MVP award, won a championship, and competed every single night like everything was on the line. When Garnett speaks on basketball, people stop and listen because he has seen the grind up close and lived the difference between being a star and being a legend. That is exactly why the tension in the room kept building as Pierce pushed deeper and deeper into his argument while Garnett sat there watching and waiting, almost like he was letting Pierce finish before he chose the exact right moment to respond. At first, Pierce sounded measured about it. He argued that international players did not just get lucky, they are built differently, trained harder and earlier through EuroLeague systems and overseas development programs that demand a level of discipline from young players that American development pipelines simply do not replicate.
They doing it off a real grind still over there.
And that is exactly where things started getting uncomfortable. Because what Pierce was essentially saying is that American players got too comfortable, while players overseas stayed hungry. That is a significant admission coming from an American basketball legend, saying it openly on camera. He painted a picture of kids overseas being sharpened through structure and pressure from a young age, while American prospects are growing up surrounded by hype, highlight reels, and shortcuts that never force them to truly develop. And then, Pierce dropped the line that stopped the entire conversation cold. He said America might not produce another NBA MVP for a full decade, not 1, 10 years. And he was not joking around when he said it. He delivered it like someone who had already made peace with the conclusion, like American basketball had already surrendered the throne and everyone just needed to catch up to that reality. That is what made the room feel so heavy. It stopped sounding like a sports debate and started sounding like a eulogy for American basketball dominance. Then, Pierce turned it directly toward the audience and made it personal. He challenged everyone watching to name the last American MVP without looking it up first. And he already knew most people would pause before answering. That silence was precisely the point he was making. Over on Gil's Arena, Gilbert Arenas and the crew pulled up the actual numbers, and the data was not flattering for Team USA. American superstars have continued putting up big individual numbers, but when it comes to MVP voting, international players have been controlling the top positions consistently. The American-born players who received any top 4 MVP votes most recently included Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James, Cade Cunningham, and Anthony Edwards. Meanwhile, the players actually winning and finishing at the very top of the voting have been Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, and Joel Embiid year after year. And the stat that gave Pierce's argument its sharpest edge was this: Stephen Curry was the last American player to even finish in the top 3 of MVP voting, and that was back in 2021. Once that number was out in the open, it landed like a direct shot at the entire American basketball development system. Pierce went even further and said plainly that the world's best players are simply better than America's best player right now. An American Hall of Famer sitting there openly admitting that the peak of basketball no longer belongs to the United States. And to be clear, Pierce still believes America has more overall depth and raw talent across the board. But when it comes to the single best player in the world, the face of the league, the MVP, he believes that crown has moved overseas. And if you were watching Kevin Garnett's face during all of this, you could see the exact moment his energy shifted. His expression tightened immediately, because to Garnett, this was no longer sounding like basketball analysis. It was starting to sound like surrender. And Kevin Garnett was not built to surrender to anyone or anything. But Pierce was still not finished pushing. He went after something Americans have always considered an unquestionable strength: toughness, defensive intensity, physicality, doing the dirty work nobody else wants to do. And according to Pierce, even that edge is beginning to erode. He pointed out that the best defender in the league right now is an international player. Imagine Kevin Garnett sitting across the table hearing that statement, one of the most ferocious and respected defenders the NBA has ever seen, being told that international players are now outworking, out-toughing, and outlasting American stars on the defensive end too. The tension at that table became palpable, and everyone could feel Garnett getting closer to the breaking point. When KG finally responded, he did not attack talent, and he did not go after skill. He went straight at what he believes international basketball quietly introduced into the NBA over the years: flopping. The dramatic falls, the exaggerated head snaps, the manufactured contact, the theatrical reactions designed to manipulate referees into calling fouls. Garnett couldn't hide his frustration with it. In his view, that style of play never represented real basketball in America before the international influence took hold across the league. To KG, this is not evolution. It's softness wearing a polished disguise. That's when the conversation stopped being polite and turned into a genuine collision between two completely different basketball philosophies. And once Luka Doncic's name entered the discussion, the intensity went up another level. Garnett's position was straightforward. Luka can score, Luka can create, Luka can put on an offensive spectacle. But on the defensive end, Garnett was not buying into the praise at all. Pierce pushed back immediately with the modern argument: if a player is offensively unstoppable, the defensive shortcomings matter less in today's game. Put up enough points, dominate the scoreboard, and the basketball world tends to overlook what happens on the other end. But Garnett represents the old-school standard, where defense determines true greatness. In his mind, a player simply is not elite unless they impose themselves on both ends of the floor every single possession, without exception. And his challenge was blunt: make these stars score and defend on every trip down the court. No breaks, no hiding behind teammates covering weaknesses, no selective effort. And his verdict on Luka was equally direct. Whatever Luka gives you offensively, Garnett believes he surrenders right back on defense. To KG, that doesn't make someone a complete superstar. That makes them half a player being celebrated like a full legend. But here's the part that truly stings for American fans. People outside the United States are agreeing with Pierce more and more with each passing year, and the criticism has evolved beyond just acknowledging that international players are getting better. According to Jay Williams, the deeper issue is that America got too comfortable. Comfortable and complacent, those were the exact words he used. Williams went on to explain where he believes the mentality started shifting, highlights the hard work:
trick shots over time spent mastering fundamentals, flash over discipline. Meanwhile, players coming up overseas are developing inside systems where nothing gets handed to them. No guaranteed hype cycle, no superstar treatment before proving anything, no easy path to minutes. You either earn your place or you watch from the bench. That pressure builds tougher players, both mentally and physically, and Williams believes that is precisely where the gap began to grow. Then he landed the line that hit hardest: we promote, they master. 4 words that captured the entire argument in a single breath. America became obsessed with packaging stars before players were fully developed, while international systems focused on building every dimension of a player's game first and letting the stardom follow naturally. Michael Wilbon agreed with the point entirely, and then suggested something basketball fans have quietly wanted to see for years: USA versus the world. Not the exhibition game that gets treated like a sideshow at All-Star Weekend. A real competition, a genuine proving ground. Exactly the kind of challenge Garnett sounded ready to embrace during this debate. And people immediately connected it to Team USA heading into the 2024 Paris Olympics, because the pressure surrounding American basketball at the international level feels genuinely different now. This is no longer just about collecting gold medals. It is about proving the United States still owns the top position in the sport it gave to the world. Stephen A. took the conversation even further. According to him, overseas basketball culture simply does not allow players to survive if they carry a soft mentality. The environment itself filters that mindset out early and without mercy. Players either fight through tough coaching and relentless pressure, or they get left behind completely. And Stephen A. identified where he believes the American system started losing that edge. A generation of players began treating hard coaching like personal disrespect rather than development. Criticism became something to reject rather than something to grow from. Accountability became a problem rather than a standard. Meanwhile, international players kept getting pushed harder and harder until they were genuinely prepared for what awaited them at the highest level. Stephen A.'s message was direct. Coach these kids hard now, or the basketball world will humble them later on a much bigger stage. But then the conversation went even deeper into territory that made people genuinely uncomfortable. Because underneath the MVP debates, underneath the highlight reels, underneath all the arguments about skill and toughness, Stephen A. identified what he believes is the actual root of the problem: money and marketability replacing winning as the primary goal. Instead of building players obsessed with championships, the system started producing players obsessed with branding, social media followings, endorsements, and positioning themselves for maximum commercial appeal. The goal changed. And the wound that keeps getting pointed at from inside basketball is the same one repeated over and over. We do not teach the game anymore. We promote it. Over on Gil's Aaron, they captured it with a metaphor that resonated immediately. When you get a European player, you get a Swiss Army knife, someone who can do everything at a high level. When you get too many American players coming through the current system, you get a pocket knife, one specialty, one flashy skill, one move that goes viral online. And according to the conversation, the difference starts way before the NBA ever becomes part of the picture. In America, bad habits often get uncorrected early on because raw talent masks the problems. Years later, coaches attempt to fix deeply embedded weaknesses that have already been locked in permanently. International systems take the opposite approach: fundamentals first, team basketball, defensive discipline, footwork, passing, and ball handling all get sharpened before the player ever gets treated like a star. That is why international big men now look absolutely terrifying. 7-footers handling the ball like guards, centers running entire offenses, power forwards stretching the floor while also passing, defending, and controlling games from multiple positions simultaneously. Meanwhile, too many American systems continue to shove younger players into narrow roles too early, instead of developing them as complete basketball players first. And then came the question that shut the room down completely. Name 3 American players right now who dominate both offense and defense at the highest level, the same way Wembanyama, Giannis, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander do. Both ends of the floor, every single night, no exceptions. Not just scoring, not just highlights, both sides. And suddenly, the room went quiet. The stats were not cooperating. The examples were not coming easily. Even Pierce slowed down because the challenge was not straightforward anymore. But Kevin Garnett never backed off for 1 second. While everyone else looked uncomfortable, KG leaned forward like someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. He didn't reach for safe answers, and he didn't hesitate. He picked one name, the 7'4" superstar that the entire league is already terrified of. And with that single choice, Garnett threw down the ultimate challenge to the rest of the basketball world. That wasn't nostalgia speaking. That wasn't an old legend refusing to acknowledge how the game has changed. That was Garnett refusing to accept that American basketball was finished, regardless of what the numbers currently suggest. You could feel the mentality behind it. Line them up, one by one, no flopping, no media hype to hide behind, no excuses, no soft matchups, just basketball and the truth about who can actually perform when the pressure is real. And that's ultimately what separated Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett throughout this entire debate. Pierce looked at international basketball and saw the future arriving, whether America is ready or not. Garnett looked at the same situation and saw a challenge that American players should be charging toward head-on instead of conceding. To Garnett, international dominance is not proof that America permanently lost the game. It's proof that America got too comfortable. And for someone like Kevin Garnett, a player who treated every single possession like a battle for 21 straight seasons, comfort might just be the most offensive thing you could ever say to a competitor. So now the real question falls on you. Are you rolling with KG and believing American basketball still has the fire to remind the world who built this game? Or do you think Pierce was telling the truth and international players have genuinely taken over the NBA for the foreseeable future? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, because this debate is nowhere near finished. And if you got value from this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another basketball fan who needs to hear this conversation.